Welcome, students. It is time for dictionaries and while loops. Major topics coming at you right now. Let's start with dictionaries. So, dictionaries are Python data structures that contain keys and values similar to words and definitions in an English language dictionary. Let's look at some dictionary examples to make things more clear. You could have an empty dictionary, here titled empty dict, with squiggly brackets and nothing inside. Okay, by definition in Python, that is an empty dictionary. You could have a dictionary called colors, which has strings as its keys, in this case red, blue, and yellow, and numbers as its values, in this case 3, 4, and 6. You could have a dictionary of student IDs, that in this case includes the strings Amani and Jorge, along with their student ID numbers 23112 and 23113. And you could have a prime sequence with numbers, prime numbers in this case, as both the keys and the values. So 3, the key 3 is a value of 2, the key 5 is a value of 3, the key 11 has a value of 5, and so on. Now let's look at modifying dictionaries. Okay, let's start with the colored dictionary. Let's say that we want to put in a new value into the color dictionary, a new key value combination. So if we want to put in the color green, first thing we do is call out the dictionary colors, use the brackets, and put green in quotations, and then set it equal to the value that we want, in this case 4. Now, it turns out that this dictionary, upon further inspection, actually gives you the length of the strings. So, you could try to count green, maybe you make an error and get 4, or you could actually use the length global function. And so in this case, when we call out the dictionary, what it's going to do, it's going to take the second assignment, not the first. So you can actually rewrite the values in this way as well. And you can see that green comes in there with a number of 5. Okay, now here's a little fun topic. Dictionary or list? How do you know what to use? When is it more appropriate? Okay, well, here's a list of names, Abdullah, Sahana, and Sadvi, and they're in order with 1, 2, and 3 as the values. So, dictionary or a list here? Well, here's the list, right? A list can only take one of these, so most likely the strings, the names, Abdullah, Sahana, and Sadvi. Okay, which one makes more sense? Well, if you're using the list, you can easily get the values, even though in Python you start with 0, right? So Abdullah is the 0th index, Sahana is the first, and Sadvi is the second. You can actually get the correct assignments by simply adding 1 to each of the indices. In a list, the order matters, okay? And that's the primary distinction. If your dictionary is simply going to give you an ordered sequence of numbers, like the 1, 2, 3 here, you're better off using a list, because that's what lists are actually for. I know maybe it looks a little cumbersome to be like, oh, names.index plus 1, but the bottom line is that the dictionaries are not in order and the lists are. So for instance, if you want to find like who's associated with the number 3, you could go to the second index and then add 1 to it to find out always. That would be tricky actually in the dictionary to find out who has it. A little trickier. Okay, let's look at the prime sequence. Dictionary or list. So it's maybe trickier. So, well, there's a dictionary, and here's the list. So why is that the list? Well, because the ordering in this case is not like 1, 2, 3, right? It's got 3 is associated with 2, 5 is associated with 3, and 11 is associated with 5. Okay. Now, it's worth stopping and thinking about this for a moment. What do you think it should be? When a list, the order matters. Okay, these are actually primes in order. I believe this is my perfectly primed sequence. And you can use a list in this case. And but you could also use a dictionary in that one. You know, I think it's not always like a right or wrong answer. Okay, now here's a dictionary of books. So we have Residence on Earth by Pablo Neruda, Butterfly Valley, a Requiem by Inger Christensen. These are books of poetry. And this should be a dictionary because the order doesn't matter. Sure, you could have them in alphabetical order, but the point is like, hey, what's the 17th book? That's not really the idea. The idea would be, oh, who is the author of Residence on Earth? So in this case, right, it's the values that are assigned to the keys which matter. And the bottom line is you can't go wrong in computer programming. It's not like one is right and the other is wrong. The point is simply here to highlight when you may want to consider one over the other. A general rule of thumb is to use a list unless it's insufficient, and then to use a dictionary. Okay, now let's look at a really cool topic called a while loop. Ooh, what is this? Okay, well, you usually initialize a while loop with a variable. In this case, we're going to have num, short for number. We're assigning the value 0 to the variable num. Now, we initialize a while loop here, like while num is less than 3. And so the idea is that while this condition is true, then we're going to go through a certain number of steps every time. So if number is 0, 1, or 2, it's okay. In this case, we just print out the number. Now, before closing the loop, however, if we want to change the number, we have to include that actually in the instructions. That's different than the for loop. So we put in num equals num plus 1, or equivalently, num plus equals 1, okay? That's the same thing. And you get the results 0, 1, and 2. Okay, let's look at this in more detail. While keyword checks the condition, is num less than 3? If the condition is met, run the indented code, otherwise skip it. So that's like the infrastructure of how a while loop works. Now, starting at the beginning, okay, num has the value of 0. So 0 less than 3 is true. Therefore, the condition is met. So we go inside of the while loop, print 0, then set num equal to 0 plus 1, which of course is 1. You see the printout of 0. And then we go back here. 1 less than 3 is true, so the condition is met. Print 1, then set num equal to 1 plus 1, which is equal to 2. So you can see the output of 1. Now, see, this is the idea with the loop. You keep going back to that phrase, while num less than 3. 2 less than 3 is true. The condition is met. Print 2, then set num equal to 2 plus 1, which is 3. You can see the output of 2. And now we get 3 less than 3 is false. The condition is not met. The while loop completes. The code underneath is done. It's skipped over. Now let's look at an infinite while loop. So I just love this. This is fun. Like, infinity is hard to actually get anywhere, right? Everything's kind of finite. And so it's fun to try to find good representations of infinity, you know, in nature and technology. Well, num equals 0. While num is less than 3, print num. We had that before. But it's getting all zeros. What's going on here? Do you see what the difference is between this code and the code before? Oh, I think we forgot num equals num plus 1. So because num has not been changed, it's always 0. You are stuck in an infinite loop. The computer program will indefinitely print out zeros. It would be kind of fun to have like a computer somewhere in a basement and do this and see how long and how it would run, how many zeros it would print out for. So it's not going to stop. Don't worry. Almost all programming environments have some kind of option like to stop execution. And another thing I will say, this happens to everyone. And to ensure that it happens to you, we will all do an infinite while loop together. Okay? So as it says, since num is 0 and 0 is always less than 3, the while loop will print out 0 forever until terminated by the programmer. Let's code.